rate all the movies that don't pass the Bechdel or Bechdel test, PG-18. First of all, I'm going to address the problem here. And even before that, I'm going to talk about the Bechdel test. Is the test that, why is it important? Why is this Bechdel test important? And in the movies that don't pass this Bechdel test, or however it's called, the movies create an image about women that are constantly talking, and that the very primary point of women's existence is actually to be close, to have something to do with men. Is it to help them? Is it to be close to them? Is it to find their love of their life? Doesn't matter. The point is that the test actually proves that if you don't pass, if the movie doesn't pass the Bechdel test, then it means that in the movie, when you have two women talking about something, it's always about men. So, why is this a problem? Yeah, sure, I'm going to just go.
Don't they do that in their daily lives?
Exactly, and they do, and that we think that is a problem. And this is why. First of all, by watching this kind of movies, we think, and it is proven, and I'm going to try to prove it right now, we think that by watching these movies, women, subconsciously or consciously start to think that their primary existence in this world is all about men. Why? We have this thing in our childhood that when we watch movies, we love the movies for numerous reasons, but one of the first reasons is that we identify with some of the characters. We get our role models from these movies. We take the role models, take the values of the role models, and then we use them in our own life. We try to be like those people, like those characters in the movies. Now what happens if the movie doesn't pass the Bechdel test? What happens to women then? Who are women's role models? Whoever women's role model is, it's surely that role model has values that those values are linked to men in some case. In every case, if it doesn't pass the Bechdel test. We would like to show you that every movie that doesn't pass this test, women that watch it, the women that identify with it, start to have the same values as the women in the movie. When they have the same values, they think that their reason, not only that their goal of life is either to satisfy a man, either to find a man, either to help some man through his rough times. And we've seen that in movies, and we've seen everything in the movies. And as the opposition said through the question, they do it in their daily lives. And we agree. It happens so often that women, and we're trying to stop and eradicate that they don't have their own genuine personality. Their personality is linked to men. No thank you. I do understand why, because the question was, they do have their personality, but I'm trying to say that it is linked to men in every case. Now, what my first argument is going to be is, I'm going to call it gender equality. And through all the world, we're currently trying to fight and trying to promote the gender equality, trying to stop the oppressiveness of males in some parts, in most of the parts of the country. Now, what we're trying to promote is this value that even though women and men are different by biological differences, they are the same through gender differences, or whatever they might be. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that even though we're different biologically, we're almost the same people. Our values, the things that we're trying to do, everything that a man can do, a woman can do also. Now, they're virtually the same except for those biological differences. Now what these movies show is that through those movies, we're seeing that it's not like that. We're seeing that men have something else other than women to talk about. Men have stories about pride, about war, about trying to fight for their country, trying to fight for what they think is right. But on the other hand, we have women who constantly, through every conversation, we have them linking them to men, which subconsciously creates an image to those kids listening and watching those movies, an idea that that is how it's supposed to be. And when their role models are showing them something like that, when their role models are all linked to men, then they are going to be linked to men, and that they are going to create their life on, based on that, based on what they've seen, based on what they've heard. And we think it's wrong. We think that's why we don't think that movies that don't pass Bechdel test are bad. We just think that kids below 18 shouldn't watch them because it creates a bad image. It creates, in our opinion, the quality of life of women would be much greater if they actually wouldn't watch those movies. Also, there are a couple more reasons why we would like to stop this, but we're going to talk about that in our next speech. For all these reasons, I would like to propose this motion.
We thank the Prime Minister for his speech, and would now like to call upon the Leader of the Opposition to open this debate from the opposition side. Hear, hear.
Hello to everybody. I would like to start this debate from the side of opposition. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a rebuttal of the things that we heard in opening government, and then I will say the first argument, which is other criteria for PG-18, and then the second argument will be presented in the second speech by Erla, and it is against positive discrimination. First of all, let me start with the rebuttal. What the side of government first said, that movies make an image and that women only talk about men. And that is that awful image that is creating gender inequality. First of all, let me say that these movies sort of, we can see what is actually happening in real life. Okay, women talk to men, talk about men, that is their real life stories, they have to exchange it, and but this isn't the only movie. This isn't the real why we are creating gender differences. I mean, if we see the real life situation that is happening in our daily lives, we see it on television, it won't necessarily mean that we will start to be, I don't know, discriminating towards women, or they will become less self-aware, or they will not be interested in different things. So that is first of all, and that is why I like to come to my point, which is movie doesn't always send a picture. It doesn't always create such a big image, such a big influence. A movie is here, first of all, why we watch movies. We watch it mainly for entertainment. We see movie, we see what is happening, and we like it, it is funny, we don't actually care about it so much. We just want it so we could have, I don't know, fun time with it, and doesn't always mean that a movie will make an influence on us. Of course, we can sometimes identify with the characters, but doesn't necessarily mean that we will always do that. And we have a lot of variety of movies, so a person can watch different sort of movies and maybe identify with different sort of people, so create. Even another point, which is that they said that this will help, this won't have influence, this will have an influence on their personality. But this is really not, it doesn't have anything to do with real situation. Are we really saying that the movies that we watch are influencing us that much that we are creating completely different personality just because we are seeing a movie? It just isn't true. Yes, okay.
Okay, but why didn't children always role play and why do they always identify? When you see a kid playing, you don't see him playing, I don't know, you usually see him pretending he's a Spider-Man or someone from a movie, so how can you play something like that?
This is just a children's game. I mean, they're playing whatever they know. They're playing what they like, what they. You have also women who are playing war. I mean, especially in this age you have, and this is something that is good. And I think it's really good. But if you have women who will play with dolls, it's also okay. Everything is okay for us. And what I was trying to say, that personality is something that we get from home, from our values of parents, from the school, from I don't know, from the people we are hanging out with. That is our personality. Our personality is not something that that will be created by the movies. You also that sort of personality when women only. Maybe girls only play with dolls or something like that, is also due to the fact that the parents, their raising methods were slightly different. Maybe they're more conservative, so maybe their methods are slightly different. They're putting them do that, so I don't know. So that doesn't necessarily, that is something that is creating their personality much more than they will see a movie and talking about it. And the point that they were discussing was gender, that they want gender equality, and that is their main reason. Okay, but you also have, first of all, you also have movies that men talk only about women. And what does that mean? That because due to gender equality, we should ban those films, even because, I don't know, they're sending a picture that men are only talking about women. It just isn't true. We have a lot of movies. We have a lot of movies where actually women are doing different stuff, and that is okay. And even if that movie, this is okay because it just isn't hurtful enough. It isn't hurtful at all, and it just doesn't make place to be banned. That brings me to my first argument, which is other criteria for PG-18. First of all, why we are banning things? We are banning things because we see that they are really hurtful and that they are not age appropriate. For instance, what we banned, we are saying that would rate movies PG-18, for instance, where we have extreme violence situation, because kids can watch it and have a different approach to it, and have a lot of, they can see different images, they see war, killing each other, and that is something which is really disturbing, which is which is really, you see blood, you see knives and everything else, that is really disturbing, and that is why they're banned. You have explicit sex, that is again PG-18, because it is something that could be for a child of, I don't know, 10 years old, that could be traumatizing. We are actually protecting the children when we are banning something, and it has to be a really good reason. Parents can and know how to protect them. Parents are there, they have their influence. So, for instance, we ban children under 18 alcohol or cigarettes because we believe it's something really critical. When we talk about the movies that don't pass the Bechdel test, it just isn't hurtful enough. It doesn't really mean, we have a lot of other things that are maybe, could be hurtful. Being on the internet also has its wrong things that could come out, but that doesn't mean because of few wrong things that could happen, we should ban all the internet and no, you kids, you can't go to the internet. So that isn't just good reason enough to ban those things. Thank you very much.
We thank the leader of the opposition for his speech, and we come back to call on the Deputy Prime Minister to further this debate for the government side. Here.
Okay, so the way we heard from the opposing speaker, it seems like discrimination isn't such a big deal nowadays, because obviously we don't need to address that problem. And they say that we're not protecting the children with this, but we are, Another thing that he said is that we get our personality from home. Movies don't affect us that much. Well, that's not true. We develop our personality based on the environment we live in. Movies, when we're children, when we're young, they have a lot of influence on us because that is our kind of entertainment. We love to watch movies, they're fun for us. We love seeing people living their lives, and we love identifying with them. And as Bechdel already explained, that is the problem. Thanks to those movies, they perceive a society like a place where men and women have their own roles to fill. And that is what is the problem, because as long as you have this role that you have to fill somewhere in your life, as long as I know that one day I have to find my sweet hubby and to do everything for him, that is a problem, because there is an image that society has put on me, and that is where I lose my right to have to be equal and to have all my rights fulfilled. And another thing is these movies are not going to be banned. He's talking all the time that we're going to ban them, and they're not going to be banned. They're just going to need parental guidance for children under the age of 18, which means the parents are going to have to sit down with those children and talk with them and explain to them what is different, what is the problem in those movies, and why they should address that problem further in their lives. So now I'm gonna go on, and first of all, I think we have explained enough why it's really important to be to protect children under the age of 18 from this kind of influence, because one day they're going to be our society. One day they're gonna deal with all these problems. They're gonna have choices to make, and it is important to create a good way of developing their mind. So, as I said, the big thing here is that nowadays discrimination is a subtle word. We don't see, we feel discriminated all the time. I'm going to take me, for example. I live in a society that I'm surrounded with people whom I perceive as tolerant people. So in this case, I should not be discriminated because they're tolerant and they have no intention of discriminating me. But that is the problem. Even if we're all aware, even if every guy here in this room is aware that he won't discriminate a woman, he still does it. Because we still have these problems in society, but they're much harder to perceive now. For him, it is not a big problem that two girls are only talking about men, but when you go deeper, when you see that it's going to make a woman dedicate her whole life to a single male figure, there you can see a society dominated by men. And that is what is bad, that is what is causing all the trouble. And that is the problem, because if we don't do things like this, if we don't resolve problems like this, we're never going to move forward, because we're going to always think, okay, it's okay, we have no more discrimination, everything is great in our life, and then bad things are going to happen, and then we're going to feel threatened, and then we won't even know how to address it, because we will have no way of doing it.
Don't you feel that nowadays the discrimination isn't so relevant, because the society is always progressing in women's rights?
Thank you. That is the problem. As long as you tell yourself that it's okay, that there is no problem, and that we have nothing to deal with, that is where the problem lies. Because you have to be able to perceive a problem to be able to resolve it. And you're a man, you're a guy, so you don't see the way women are discriminated today. We have wage gaps, we have all those things that we don't know how to fix. For example, we're going, no, thank you. We have, well, as I said, wage gaps or everything that we have to deal with. We don't have a real solution to this. It's not like we just have to ban something. And that is, as I said, why this is so subtle. And that is why we have to address small aren't small at all. So, okay, to sum up, it is really important for us to pay more attention how are we influencing children, because one day children are going to take the big roles in the society, they're going to change it, and we need to make them understand everything and perceive everything around them in the right way. We need to we need to remove movies that create an image of society with divided roles in their lives, and we have to do this because this is a way to move forward, and this is a way to win things that and resolve problems we have in mind. Thank you.
I thank you, Madam, for your speech, and would now like to call on the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to the Opposition side.
In my speech, first I will debate some of the points in opening government, and then I will present with my positive material, which is positive discrimination, how does this happen with this, and how is it bad. So firstly, on the point of protecting children from discrimination. Firstly, we didn't hear enough how exactly this movement is discriminated. We heard that women talk only, in these movies, women talk only about men. What are we trying to say? That yes, some women talk only about men, some don't. It's not a problem, it's creating a picture of real life and how it functions. For example, you have two women that will talk, that will sit on coffee or lunch or brunch and talk only about their prior relationships and about men, about anything. And then you have two women that won't. We believe that by making this variety of movies, we are showing our children a wider picture of the society, and that not every woman is emancipated, that not every woman wants to talk about anything, and some don't. But thank you. And about a whole point of identifying everything. Firstly, we have to show. We are going to show that. What do children watch? They watch, I don't know, boys watch action movies, boys watch, I don't know, Transformers or other cartoons, and also little girls watch cartoons, no thank you. For some, they're not concentrating on children. These movies are not like #1 watched movies for the population under 18. It happens. So we believe, no thank you, that we have so many movies today that are showing different pictures. We have movies about, I don't know, independent women, about, I don't know, we have Alec and movie, but for example, we are showing you that we have all these different kinds of women, and it's like that in real life, no thank you. And by providing a wider picture to these children, we are teaching them how to not discriminate, no thank you. Yes, and they're talking in their second speech. They're concentrating on all these ways that women are discriminated today. And we say yes, discrimination is still a big problem, but you're not solving it by banning these movies. They're not showing exactly how these movies will change the mindset of a whole population. How banning these movies will, thank you, for children will change the mindset of a whole population and make women equal. It will only prevent children from watching Sex and the City 2, which we don't believe it's the biggest problem in discrimination. Yes.
Point. Do you know what kind of movies had these Bechdel, favorite Bechdel?
Oh, yeah.
Teenage movies mostly.
Teenage movies. Romantic comedies and such. We believe that yes, there are some romantic comedies that are involved about lonely women talking about men, but we believe there's enough movies to see the wider picture of the world. It's enough movies to see that some women are talking only about men, some doesn't, and it's okay for us to present them the whole picture. Moving to my argument, which is positive discrimination. So, we believe that if we want to equalize men and women in this world, we have to change their mindset, not their rules. Why? What do we create when we discriminate something positively? Positive discrimination is a form of making someone equal by by giving him rights that the other population or other part of the population doesn't have. And if we're giving these movies, if we are banning these movies for children under 18, we're giving that picture that women have some perks in the society just because they're women. And what does that create to them? It creates for them knowledge that we're different, and it makes them realize at that moment when we say you have perks because you're a woman and you have not because you're a man, no, technically, we're giving them perks, we're giving them them idea that they're different, and then discrimination starts. If we want to change the discrimination, if we want to change the world, this isn't just relevant enough. It's not big enough, and it's not solving all the problems that opening government wanted to solve. Yes, also about constant discrimination. When you give like for example, we have in Croatia and in other countries, example of children that parents went to war have to have less points for going to college or high school. What did that create? It created a picture in society that they have something just because of their backgrounds and by their hard work. And this is the same thing. What that created? That created a bad picture about them. Not good. Nobody said, okay, it's great. I have to study for 8 years and I don't know, work really hard, and you became someone just because of your background. It isn't no technique. It didn't solve the problem. It just made you believe that someone has something just because of background or because of his work. No, thank you. We believe that positive discrimination can be good in this part because it makes no, thank you, a picture about differences between men and women, and then when children realize that we can go because it's about two females, it's making discrimination even bad, because then people realize what is happening. To sum up the whole opening opposition idea, we believe that firstly, to make something PG-18, it has to be traumatic for the children. It has to have some visible bad influences and some visible not benefits for the children. And we believe that these movies don't. We believe that these movies are not, that we have so many movies today that children can watch the whole picture of the world. And we believe it's good for them to know the whole picture of the world, to know that some women are talking of them, but men and some doesn't. We believe that the problems they listed are not solving by their arguments and by this motion, because we believe that if you want to change something, you have to change the mindset that positive discrimination never does. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam, for her remarks. This is more like the government member. We'll open this debate for the second half of the government side. Here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we need to address the name of our argument, which will at the same time rebuttal what the opposition said, and then can build on the constructive cases of the present government. So the name of our argument is cultural hegemony. Why cultural hegemony? To understand that we need to see the influence that the media has. As movies are considered as media, and media is used as a weaponry for getting to the wide masses and sending a picture which will be accepted by those wide masses for the sake of the media being there. And basically the main role of the media is showing the wide masses a picture which they need to accept. We see that in movies which we discussed, that women are influenced by women in those movies, because women are constantly acting in a way that influences women to do so. Because we can see that, for example, we have idolizing children, not only children, but then again teenagers, and then after teenagers we have grown-up adults that idolize characters in movies. We saw that by, I think it was a point of information when you see children playing as Spider-Man, they do that because they saw it in the movie and they think that's cool and they want to be that. No thank you. So, if you see certain figures in a movie that you like those actions, you try to do those actions by yourself, thus the movies influence your functioning in society. You can see that in movies such as American Pie, where there's four guys constantly trying to penetrate female dogs. So yes, this media influence creates this climate, social climate of apathy in which we have a variety of movies, but in that variety of movies, we constantly see that women are addressing men as the center of their world. They're constantly talking about, no thank you, they're constantly talking about men that indicates that women are rotating around the idea of men being there. Then you have teenage movies, which the target audience is teenagers, as you can guess from the title, right? From this term, never mind. So basically, teenagers get influenced by not only, yes, I think in the first opposition's speech, he mentioned that we get our personality from home, we get our personality from school, we get our personality from the environment. But those movies are part of our environment. Those movies influence us because we see them. And my point was, yes, so basically, we talk to a professor, we receive some information, and we grab on it. Not necessarily accept it as valuable, but it sticks there. And maybe in some time, that will go on the surface and you will act according to the information you receive. So if we are receiving constant information of women talking about men, we are creating this picture that women have only, the only subject they have is somehow connected to men. Not necessarily being exactly about men, like talking about how cute he is or something, but in a way it's influenced by the existence of men in their world. And I'm going to go to my previous point, that being shown in those movies that women are watching, they are creating these subliminal influences which are visible in movies because their target audience is everyone. They try to get more and more from the audience itself, so thus creating this hypothetical picture of only one thing to be accepted and nothing. Females is them working again around men. So yeah. No thank you. You said yes, movies and entertainment. The first opposition indicates that we only watch movies because of entertainment, but we watch football. Football the idea of football is entertainment, but you see that people get too stuck up in that idea about football and beat each other because of football. And we're talking about football which doesn't send any obvious signals to the people to get beaten up and beat people up. But we're talking about movies which are verbal movies. Verbal movies verbal media that talks to you and you receive that information really easily because you are paying attention to that. And if someone, okay, this is my point.
Do you think that because of forming, let's say, Brokeback Mountain, everybody thinks that cowboys are gay?
No, that is not the thing. You have one movie which cowboys are gay, but we are talking about a global problem. We have so many movies that have women talking about men, and that's showing, that's sending persuasive information not only to women. We're talking about women here, but also to children. The argument of the government was we need gender equality. It's not only about gender equality, it's about how that gender equality is going to influence the generations further in the future. And we want our children to see that women and men both have interesting stories, both have something to talk about, and not men always being the main role and women being below them. Even you can see that in Sex and the City, you have 4 independent women who are succeeding in life, who are doing everything so right, but throughout the series, they're only talking about females. And this, about males, about males. And throughout the series, in every, I don't know, I haven't watched every episode, but I suppose in every episode they talk about men, and you have a wide range of audience that watches that. It's a successful movie that has a huge box office. Haven't you seen box office? Oh, never mind. So, without further ado, my time is run out. I would like you to propose.
I thank the member of the government for the speech, and we now like to call upon the member of the opposition to open this debate for the last thing to speak in this round, that is the opposition. Here you go.
Thank you, dear educator Mika. Hello to you all. I wish you good luck and so on. Well, before I start with my speech and my, let's call it arguments, and take this debate into a whole new perspective, I will reflect shortly on the previous speeches which we have just heard. Basically, we have heard first government and now the member of the second government speaking only about women. But I believe there is so much more in this case than just women. There are also movies and there are also children. And no one said anything about no movies nor about children. And perhaps movies and children are more important than women. First of all, we have heard a lot about discrimination. And yes, but let's just ask ourselves a very simple question. How are we trying to solve discrimination? Women discrimination by discriminating men, because we have a rule which obviously discriminates men and says that only women should be reflected. Also, we have heard a lot about influence later. We have heard a lot about movies influencing children and other women. Yes, it's true, they do influence, but first of all, I believe that women have started talking about men much before movies. Basically, in the 19th century, they were talking about basically, in the 19th century, women have also spoken a lot about men, I believe so. Also, we believe that if you raise your child properly, if you learn him those diverse abilities, that these children will know that, also, if you learn your child these diverse abilities, if you learn your child that men and women are equal, that no women, no men are more important, then your child will be properly raised and your child will know the difference between good movies and bad movies, and basically those movies won't leave any kind of impact. Therefore, if you raise your child as a man, of course that movies aren't necessary, and the influence of movies isn't as necessary as raising those children. Also, we were speaking about those romantic comedies and so on. Yes, I believe that in this world there hasn't been a movie recorded without women talking about shoes or dresses, and those topics make them look even more ridiculous than women talking about other men. I would like to say that there are some movies in which there simply isn't place for women, and that's perfectly normal. For example, one of my favorite movies, Reservoir Dogs. There isn't a single lady in that movie. Can you just imagine a woman acting in a movie recorded by Quentin Tarantino? It would completely ruin that movie and it would make it ridiculous. Not because women are less important, but because there isn't place for women in that movie. You can imagine Mr. Green killing other men. It's not suitable. Also, it's nothing which discriminates. There are movies in which there isn't a place for a man. Also, we haven't heard from the Prime Minister actually on which movies does this rule reflect. So let's assume that it reflects on every movie. Therefore, if it reflects on any movie, it reflects on, for example, documentaries. If in a single documentary in which, for example, a man is speaking about history, does that mean that I have to stay there and boringly watch something with my child just because there isn't a single woman in it? It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Who wants to go?
So basically, can you answer this question? Is there any documentary which has explicit content that is banned for people under, children under the age of 18?
Yes, there is. Of course, there is a documentary which is allowed for children, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about those. There are simple movies which aren't allowed for young people. Movies in which you have titties and vaginas. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about women talking about men. So, not talking about men, sorry, not talking about men. Also, I would like to say that if this rule has a giant hole in it, basically you have one scene in which women are talking about shoes, for instance, and the next scene there are women who obey man's command. Does that mean that the movie is suitable? No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. And yet, this movie would allow it and would leave much worse impact on the children than any other movie I have previously mentioned. And points of information. Points of information.
Okay, so I want to get you back to those. Don't go there anymore. How does the Bechdel test discriminate men? Can you please explain that? Because at the beginning you said that this Bechdel test discriminates men. Well, that's
the fact that we are talking just about women. Just about women. We are not mentioning any rule which is putting a man in a bad position. It says a lot about men being discriminated. Men are discriminated in this debate because we aren't talking about them, and we can't say that men aren't discriminated. Anyway, to sum up, I believe that there isn't a space for women in every movie. I also believe that if you raise your children properly, that some ridiculous movie in which women are talking about men won't leave any kind of impact and won't make your child bad, and that won't leave a role model for your child.
I thank the opposition member for his speech and would now like to call on the government to conclude this debate for the government side. Hear, hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, discrimination has been the main focus of this debate. We've been mentioning things like gender equality. Even though males and females are the same biologically, they differ biologically, they have the same kind of values. This creates images to children that how women are sidelined, how males are the main characters and women are their sidekicks. They behave accordingly in their lives, and you make the point about how if parents raise their children correctly, this wouldn't be a problem. But you must realise that while children are very, very, very young, their parents, yes, do have complete influence over them. But as they grow older, surely outside influences such as people they surround themselves with, the media that they're exposed to, surely that influences them as well. You can't be blind to everything that's going on around you. You can't be blind to the society you're living in. Movies are, the argument has also been made that movies are for entertainment and not for life values. But has nobody in here ever heard of a mass medial influence? Media, it's all subliminal manipulation. There are, for example, adverts, movies, there are all messages being sent out in the movies. However, underneath these messages, there are subliminal messages that get to people with people pretend they're from America, American Pie. American Pie, no thank you, we mentioned American Pie, it's about a few males who want to go and they want to get all the girls. And they all think, oh, that's so cool, they're celebrities, oh look, they're accepted in society. We must behave like them, you know? But society is made up of every single one, every single individual, and all these individuals are going to act like people who have been accepted and who are big parts of society. Yes, please.
Are we recording movies about the people, or people make them look like movies? You know, which way do those?
What do you mean?
Do you record a movie about people acting some way, or people act some way because of the movie?
Movies are made to appeal to people. The mastermind behind movies think about what people want. They portray what people want, and then people grab these things. But it's all subliminal. It's everything. It's not about discrimination. This debate isn't about discrimination. This debate is about objectification. In these films, objectification of women is a serious issue. Just now you were talking about how one scene women are talking about shoes, and then the next scene they're talking about there being sidekicks now. Do you not think that that is objectification? Do you not think that it's got you by thinking that women can only talk about shoes and films, and that women can only talk about how they have to pay towards males? It creates. You said that movies create a picture of real life. Movies don't create pictures of real life. Real life society, community gets how they function from films. Films are global. Little communities. Culture is made up of thousands of little subcultures. Films is the big culture. It's like the God culture. And then every single culture from all over the world is little subcultures. And we get what our ideas from the big culture, the film, the media, the subliminal messages. Yes, please.
The media had a really important role in the right of women's rights and
I do, yes, but I don't think it has enough. I don't think it has enough of a role, because in the films that people watch, oh, let's go to the cinema. The new films coming up. The females don't even have names. The females are just sidekicks. The males are like, oh, let's go out, oh, let's be rowdy, and then the females are just next to them, being like, oh, males, lovely. No, thank you. How are we trying? You said something about how we're trying to solve women discrimination, and how when we're trying to solve women discrimination, we're discriminating against us. This motion does not discriminate against us. It raises awareness. Nothing was said that strong male characters can't be present in this film, and it is simply balancing. This motion simply balances genders, and it simply makes people equal. My child is yes. Every single speech made by you three so far, it shows, it is a picture. It's funny because you're arguing against our motion, but it's funny because every single argument you're making shows how much you've been influenced by it, and it's ridiculous, basically. In order to resolve the problem, we must see the problem, we must recognise the problem, and therefore making these films over 18, just to start with, maybe not necessarily they don't have to be 18 in the future, but it shows to everybody that there is a problem, and this problem needs to be addressed. Subliminal media manipulation is illegal for a reason. In the olden days, when you watch the film, you suddenly get flashes of hope. This is illegal for a reason because it manipulates people. It works psychologically. Sidelining women in films and making them their sidekicks is subliminal manipulation, and this is why, ladies and gentlemen and kind judges and everybody in the room, this motion must be passed.
I thank the madam for her speech, and would now like to call on the opposition whip to conclude this debate as a whole. Here, David.
My own conclusion. I believe that people should be positive. Life is full of negative things, so if anything we can decide is to be positive. Okay. As my colleague was saying, why go to believe that men talk about women much more than women talk about men. So, but that's relevant right now. When we talk about men, it's because I believe, in my life, as my personal experience, I talk about men because I believe, I know what I want, I know I'm smart, I have some goals in life, but I talk about men because I can understand physics, I can understand art, I can understand science, but I don't understand men. That's because I don't understand men. And that's not a bad thing. I believe that people, they're all people judging and have opinions, not because they see something, but because that's how they are raised at home. I don't think that once every scene can define you as a person and can define your character. That's why I think that there is no solution in banning children to watch movies that have two women talking about men. As my colleague was saying, movies are for fun, and your state of mind about women or any other stuff is what your parents or teachers or anybody else teaches you. But movies, it's just some point of view that will help you to have some opinion.
You're talking about yourself personally, and you may be an extraordinary individual, but surely we need to focus on the bigger picture and more globally, more globally.
Yeah, I'm talking about myself because I know what's in other people said, but I believe that every children and every kid should be taught that in every woman's life there is a man, as a father or as a brother or as a son, and in every woman's life there is a man in same positions. So why generalize women in one class and men in others? There's nothing bad in a woman talking about men and men talking about women. It's a normal thing, and there are always these stupid women and stupid men, and there are always there are always big movies putting women in bamboo tree position, but that's real life. And why would we ban children of watching that? Because one day in their life there will be one kid grown up and see a woman that is smart and see a woman that is stupid. And maybe because of that time he'll find a difference and know how to value women or any people. And why ban something, but in real life it's normal information. That's why to sum up talk. Yes.
It is normal in real life. The problem is that these movies portray that as the only way women can marry. So,
yeah, I understand the question. I don't think that these kind of movies, any kind of movies, have that much of influence on people, and it's not that they are saying that one movie can generalize. People who are generalizing, they're not. They will generalize in everything. That doesn't depend about movie. That doesn't depend about person. So that's my conclusion. Thank you.